Okay, well, let's get started, I suppose.
Yeah, let's do. What are we? What's the subject we're touching on today?
So the subject today is masks. So the requirement by the Victorian Government to wear masks are compulsory currently in Australia or here in Victoria, and I know that many people might be watching this from overseas as well. And I understand, is that coming up your way as well? Are they talking about doing that where you are?
Well, I would presume that once the exercise two, in correlation to event 201 and lockstep exercise two I speak of, I believe that they probably will start pushing for that. However, in the current environment here in Queensland on the east coast of Australia, it's just, it's just a suggestion to wear masks in supermarkets, etc. But I'm up further north in central Queensland, and you wouldn't know anything's going on up here. It's pretty good. So,
Oh, really? That's nice.
no masks, no, moving out of the way swiftly for if you come close to somebody. So it's really good. But I think the environment will certainly change when they start pumping the media. That there's all cases up in Queensland and probably closer to home here. So we'll wait and see, I suppose.
So are there people on the streets and in the stores, any people wearing masks?
No, not around. Oh, you'll get an occasional one or two here, but that's about it. There's, you wouldn't know that something's going on.
Oh, wow, that's really nice. I might have to move.
Yeah, but that's not to say down in Brisbane, because I'm a few hours, 6 hours from Brisbane, so maybe
So
a little bit.
You're at Mackay, are you?
No, Gladstone, just a bit, probably 3 hours north of Harvey Bay.
Yeah, right. Okay.
So when you speak of masks, I've seen a few doctors and commentary from your health professionals. And, old write-ups and recommendations to do with masks. And my general, the general picture that I got from that is just that it's not healthy for you. There's long-term effects and whatnot. So ultimately you're saying down there the government are making it mandatory to do harm to you. And if you don't do harm to yourself, the police obviously, from what I've seen, just unleash on you and do further harm.
Yeah, and it actually gets worse. I'll go into it in a minute, but the Biosecurity Act 2015, which is a federal legislation, actually does not allow for masks. It actually there's no provision for masks. It doesn't even allow them to to make a rule requiring people to wear masks. That's the first thing. The second thing is, the state legislation, which is the Public Health and Wellbeing Act 2008, also doesn't make any allowance to wear masks, but it actually gets worse than that. The act wasn't even actually passed by Parliament. The Public Health and Wellbeing Act 2008, which is what they're relying on, wasn't actually even passed by Parliament. It didn't get the votes that it was supposed to get in the first reading. So in Australia, and I think in many countries, a bill is proposed in the Parliament. It gets the first reading and then they vote it through. It gets the second reading, they vote it through, and it gets the third reading and they vote it through. And then it goes for signing to the governor and it becomes law. In the first reading, it didn't actually get the votes it was supposed to get to even go to the second reading.
Wow. Have you got any links to that at all?
Yes, I'm currently in touch with Parliament. I'm exchanging a few emails with them to get the actual documentation that shows the actual votes and the readings.
Brilliant.
So I'm in the process of doing that. So let me share my screen with you, and I'll let's go through a letter that I wrote regarding a fine that I received about 2 weeks ago. 2 weeks ago. Yeah. So a fine that I received about 2 weeks ago regarding, me not wearing a mask in public. So I'm going to go through this with you. I'm going to read it. I might put some comments in. You can too, obviously, as well. And this is so that everyone can see the general structure of what one of these letters looks like. So it's a notice of objection, which needs to be sent to the police department within 28 days of you having received the fine. So this is a 12-page letter. It's longer than it needs to be, and the only reason for that is I've included as much evidence as I can to support my case. Needless to say, when the police get these letters, they don't actually read them. They just simply write back to you and say, oh, whatever, your letter has been received, and we believe that the fine was issued correctly, therefore you still need to pay it.
Okay, just one second. Now, with that, you've said, after 28 days after you get a fine, what about the people can be setting something like this in prior? So therefore, there is that notice, so there's more of a chance of a solid redress because they have been noticed prior that these are the current laws that you're regulated by, so be bound by them. And if something occurs after that fact, well, you've got more foundation to whip some arse on, perhaps.
That's exactly correct.
Right.
Well, I did that a few months ago with Victoria Police, and I actually mentioned that in this letter. So not only have we notified them prior to even receiving a fine, we're also now objecting to after we did get the fine, and we're informing them that we actually have already sent them some documentation, and we go through what that documentation was. So the point of this exercise is actually to create a public record and a paper trail, so that when you end up in court, you have something to stand on. It's not so that we can necessarily send this to the police and expect them to just cancel the fine. That'd be great, and that is something you want to aim for, but it's not something we should expect, because it most likely won't happen that way. It'll end up going to court, and it'll be through the courts that you'll be mentioning to the magistrate or whatever that, look, you've gone through this process. This is all the documentation you put through. They didn't rebut it. They didn't reply properly, et cetera, and so forth. Even better to that, which is what I want to talk to you about in our next call, is to not actually even go to court. That's the ultimate goal. How do you have these fines overturned or discharged without actually needing to go to court? So that's actually even better than what I'm proposing here. But if you're unable to do that, then what I'm proposing here is probably the next best thing. Okay, so let's go through it. And the last video we did was really long, so we're going to try to keep this one under an hour if we can possibly.
Fantastic. And you've also taken out some details there, so I don't have to edit that. That's brilliant. Thanks for that, mate.
Yeah, I felt really sorry for you in the last one, because I know what editing's like. I've done editing and it's a pain in the butt.
It sure is.
Okay, so we in the top right-hand corner here, we have our name. I have used the lowercase name because I'm talking to these guys as a living man. I'm not talking to them as the legal entity with the all caps name. And I've also inserted the, what do you call that again? The colon, to separate the first name from the surname. So ideally you would write this as Alex of the family Stefan. I didn't want to make it too long, so you use the colon there to separate the two names. Because the surname actually you can do that for me. What does the all caps surname or just the surname in general do when you use it?
Well, it's actually godless. So it just takes you further away from source, really. And, when you mentioned just earlier of the family. Now, I'm just thinking out loud here, family, the etymology of family, I think is foolish. Of the foolish, godless.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, you know, and that's fantastic. That column there really does separate and sever from that godless. However, you know, there's a lot of people that haven't quite got to the point where they've actually reverted and gifted back to the Commonwealth de jure land the surname. But that's something that I've come to realise lately, is that of the family is pretty detrimental, really, because when you're looking at a surname, it's something that's owned by the very people that enslave us. So of the family, Lucifer, let's say for simplistical speak, you know, that's a bit ridiculous, isn't it? Do you think?
Okay. Yep.
Sort of thing. So, but in this case here, I suppose it makes a bit of sense because you haven't probably done your reversionary. I mean, back in 2015, I think, yeah, my person, which would be the surname, he actually had a civil death, and he actually wrote a suicide note to myself, you know, explaining why he took that. He took the leap of death because he wanted to unbound me of the shackles of usury and slavery. So he had a death there. But furthermore to that, I also done a reversionary and reverted it back to the Commonwealth. So I said, here you go. You can have this one back. I don't want it anymore. So,
Okay.
and all this here is on record. You know, the Office of Executor actually has two tax file numbers. One's tied to a deceased estate, which is all tax exempt, and that came through from the civil death there of the person. So, yeah, I never really, you know, use the surname. Well, I do use the surname, but I use it in the sense of the office that I work out of. So, in my case, it's Daniel Luke. The Daniel Luke being the fact, I am what I am, of the Office of Executor for the Shoals Daniel Luke estate.
So if you were writing your name in the top right hand corner of a letter, what would you be writing?
Well, for starters, I'd be going from an office to an office, seeing the office as a vessel, as a ship, perhaps. So it'll be the office, their office to my office to their office, and the man to man. So, for example, the Office of the Executor for the Shoals Daniel Luke estate to the Office of Queensland Police Services, you know, from Daniel Luke to Brian Smith.
Right. That's interesting. I want to go through that in more detail in our next call. I want you to take me through all that, if that's okay.
Sure.
Okay, so moving along. So I always put next to my name when I'm writing a letter that I'm a living man under common law, because we need to make that abundantly clear, because there is always the presumption in any correspondence or when you're standing in front of a policeman or when you're standing in front of a judge, they always presume that you are the straw man, the legal fiction entity, the all caps name. So not only do I use the lowercase name, I also make sure that I always put next to my name that I'm a living man under common law. And if I was standing in front of a judge and he says, could you state your name for the record, please? I would actually say it exactly as it is here. With a policeman, I don't bother because most of them are clueless. They don't know what you're talking about. Although I guess it doesn't hurt to state it even in front of them, because all their conversations are recorded and they use those recordings in court. So technically a judge could say to you or to the police officer, let's have that audio recording of your interaction with the policeman. I want to see how you identified yourself to him. So if you didn't state it like this to the policeman, the judge could potentially use that against you. He's going to say, well, how come you identified yourself to the policeman in this way and now you're identifying yourself to me in this way, in this other way? So, you know, it can help, but just remember that the policemen themselves don't have a clue what you're talking about.
That's right. You could be seen as being in two minds. Therefore, your award, well, you're an infant, and they will take control of you because you are such a, you're a ward, you're a child, juvenile infant, and that's right. So a capital A, lowercase l, lowercase e, lowercase x, colon, space, capital S, lowercase t, lowercase e, lowercase f, lowercase a, lowercase n, full stop. That'd be a really good way to, put it on the record, I think. And, when you mentioned recording, yes, the police do record these days, but, we need to record.
Yes, of course.
And if you cannot get your, you'd feel kind of comfortable doing a video, at least just turn your audio on and keep it in a place where it will pick up the sound. And that's very important because, men, are very self-determined. So, when you do get back home, or in my case, back to the office of executor, I will certainly go through that. And I won't get into too much detail when I'm on the side of the road because, as you've said, Alex, we're dealing with some really low IQ'd psychopaths and some lovely individuals, some lovely police officers out there, but, we know most of them as being bad. So we can go back to it and we can go like there might be a question there in relation to asking the officer if he's a public servant, and he says that he is. You say, well, I'm not requiring any of your services. You are dismissed and relieved there, sir. Thank you. And if they don't go anywhere, well, that they're not actually a public servant and whatnot. But that's just for an example. And that there's huge because when it comes to
that's not going to happen. That's not going to happen, right? In most cases.
Yeah, it hasn't yet. But that's been great, because I've then gone, okay, well, you're obviously still hanging around. So you're trying to meddle in my business. You're actually a trading company, right? And it's like, well, I believe that you are. And because of such, a few years ago now, I've, noticed your principle, a fee schedule and terms and conditions within an agreement which you've agreed to. Therefore, there is a law between your boss, which is the company that you work for, and myself. So right now you're in breach of law and you will be held to account through private prosecution. And I do give them warning. I do remain in honour and I urge them to walk away and mind their business because they are a business and they're trying to meddle in my business.
Yeah.
So it's very important, as you say, do record and have that on your file because I mentioned the Office of Executor. I've also got the Office of Registrar, the Office of Trustee. I've got children, the Office of Guardian. So, there's all sorts of functions there because why would one want to register things, through a private company that we know are so corrupt and so nefarious with the things that they do? They just want to steal your money and take things. So, why not use your own registry and have your own records?
Exactly. Agreed. Yeah, that's true. And we can go into more detail on that in the next call when you share your experiences and your knowledge with us. I'd be very interested in hearing that. Okay, so let's move along. So on the left-hand side here, we have obviously attention to the name of the constable. We also want to put in there his registration number. Is that what they call it? A registration number? Yeah, I think that's what they call it.
I think
every police officer has a number, a badge number. I think they call it the registration number. And we're also addressing it to Victoria Police. In this case, it's in all capitals because Victoria Police here in Victoria are actually a company. And in this letter, we'll go into some detail about that. Then below that, we're going to put the infringement notice number so that when they receive this, they know what the heck you're talking about. And then below that, we're going to put the heading of what this letter entails. And it entails a few things. The first thing it entails is a notice of objection to the above infringement notice. The second thing it entails is a demand from us to them.
Hey, Alex.
Yep.
Could I just interrupt you there when you spoke on to the Victorian Police and all upper case, and pointing out that it's a trading company, or it's a corporation rather, or it's just not a de jure government, put it that way, right?
It's not a government, it's not a lawful government body, no.
Yeah, because we've got government de facto and we've got government de jure. So
Yep.
I think people's belief in government would be a government de jure because they're a proper government, a government for the people that bend over backwards for the people, rather in contrast of the de facto government, which if you look up the definition of de facto, it's an invalid one. But if you put belief into it, well, it will maintain its power. But I've got this article here dated back into 2014, the 5th of July now. The heading, it's out of the Age paper. Now, it's the heading, State Denies Duty of Care to Injured Police. It goes on to say, the state government and Victoria Police are using an arcane legal technicality to block seriously injured police officers from suing the force for compensation, claiming they owe no duty of care to the members hurt in the line of duty. The use of the contentious tactic comes as Victoria Police are finding as at least 3 lawsuits from former officers who allege they received permanent physical and psychological injuries on the job. In a bid to avoid a payout, the government is claiming that police officers are not technically employed of the state, but public officers conducting independent duties, absolving the government of civil liability for their injuries. It goes on a bit more, but that there really points out that they're not under the employ of the government. They stand alone.
Gold. That is really good. Can you send that to me?
Certainly, mate. And I'll also put it on the link too below. But I believe that on their payroll, they're getting paid from a private police something or otherness. So,
Oh, is that right?
yeah, indeed.
I did an ABN search with the words Victoria Police in it, and there were about 20 different organisations that all have that name that I'm guessing are all related to Victoria Police. So the entity that's paying them is probably one of those other entities that is probably a private company.
Well, that's right. I mean, they really layer stuff. They've just got so many different layers, and one particular department, which would be the Department of Human Services, Alex. I mean, these guys here, mate, they're very incognito. I mean, you know, trying to ascertain information on certain heads of department, you know, they're just a standalone corporation, and I think they're a subsidiary of the tax office, to be honest.
All right. Interesting.
And what's more interesting is human services.
Yeah. Okay, let's move along. I'm really looking forward to getting that link. I want to see what you just read there, because I'm actually looking for some stuff like that at the moment. So the more ammunition I can get on that point, the better for all of us. Okay, so the second part, as I said, there is a demand for further and better particulars. We're going to ask the police to provide us with some information to answer some questions. Once again, they usually do not reply to the questions, but that's going to be, the fact that they don't reply to those questions is going to be used as evidence if and when you end up in court. And then finally, there's actually an agreement that I put at the end of all my letters, basically stating that if you don't provide this information or you don't reply to this letter within a certain time period with the information, you agree to the following terms, which I also use in a court of law. Okay, so dear Constable so-and-so, I hereby provide my notice of objection to the infringement notice mentioned above. The following are the reasons for my objection, followed by a request for further and better particulars. Please note that your non-response will constitute your legally binding agreement to the terms set out below. You have to say this because if you say to the judge, if you end up in court, oh, look, they didn't reply, therefore they agreed to the terms at the bottom, he's going to say, did you inform the reader of the letter up front that if they didn't reply that they were going to be bound by any terms? If your answer is no, then the judge is going to say, well, then they're not bound because you didn't give them notice.
111%. Very important indeed. That's right, because not only the fact that we're pointing out regulations that they're outside of and they're not actually being bound and staying within their laws, you know, this is also administration. This is also an agreement. This is also a contract. So on the administrational side of the contract, it must be very clear, like you pointed out. Indeed, Alex.
Yep, correct. By the way, I got 2 more fines after this one. Not for not wearing a mask, but for other driving offences. And I have a separate video that I think we should make on that, because I actually quite enjoyed that interaction with the police.
Wow. You know, that just proves that you're just such a good man with common sense, mate, getting all these fines for doing all the good things. Good man.
Yeah, I'm doing all the right things, aren't I?
Good man.
Okay, let's move along. So I like to put headings and divide the sections up, just so that it can be easy to read for them and also for me. So this first section is called My Standing Under Common Law. I need to notify them up front what my legal standing is, so that they have an opportunity to reply to that. And if they don't, then obviously that stands in the court as being an unrebutted claim. So number 1, you have unlawfully attempted to deprive me of my rights as a living man under common law and have attempted to enforce statutory law upon a non-statutory entity, an act that is known as unlawful conversion. Okay, number 2, I am a living man under common law and not statutory law. My birth is registered with the International Common Law Court, as can be evidenced by my birth certificate issued by the International Common Law Court. One of the things that's very important here is that if you got to stand in front of a judge or even make a claim to anybody that you are a living man under common law and not a statutory entity, the question always comes down to evidence. What evidence can you provide? Now, obviously, one of the best evidences you can provide is the fact that you're standing there as a human being in the flesh. But when you're in a court, courts don't go by flesh and living beings, they go by paperwork. Okay, what paperwork do you have that demonstrates what you're saying? Now, you do have a birth certificate issued by the state. That's paperwork. If you want to rebut that presumption that birth certificate creates, you need to have an equivalent amount of paperwork to do that. And therefore, you need to have a document or official bit of paperwork that shows that you are in fact a living man under common law. And you would get that, the best place to get that at the moment is from the International Common Law Court.com. No, actually it's called commonlawcourt.com. And you'll be able to get a birth certificate there that will evidence you as being a living man under common law, which you can then use in court. Once again, I would not recommend anyone make the claim in an official capacity, like in a courtroom, that they're a living man under common law if they have no paperwork or no evidence whatsoever to demonstrate that. Not that it's wrong, but the judge will usually just ignore you. So you don't want to put yourself in that position.
How about for those in that position that have the court provide proof of claim or provide proof or evidence that they are a person?
You're going to do that too. Yes, exactly. That's correct.
Where are they? What interpretation are you referring to as person? We've got Blacklaw's Dictionary, we've got Bolivar's, we've got interpretations through different acts with different interpretations of person. Now, which one are you referring to and what is a person?
Exactly, because all the acts use the word person. Very rarely, if ever, will you find the word man, woman, human being. Human being, I think you might find sometimes. But usually they'll use the words persons, person, natural person. And those are all legal terms. and you can ask the court or the accuser to define by law what that word means, and is that you, and can he prove that you are one of those things, a person or a persons.
And I also believe when you go to court, you've got an opportunity to get an interpreter.
Usually they use a lawyer for that, which is not a good idea.
Oh,
But
yeah,
yes.
that's right, because the lawyer represents you.
Correct.
From man to person.
Yeah, he essentially converts you from being a man to being a person. Although you've kind of already converted yourself because you have the paperwork that kind of proves that you're a person. That birth certificate issued by the state and all that kind of thing.
Furthermore to that, when they've called out Mr. Joe Smith, you've gone out there and said, yep, I'm here.
You've put your hand up and said, yeah, I'm Mr. Joe Smith.
And the system works in presumption, so they're
That's
presuming
correct.
that you are the person, so they'll take a different position there in the trust, because this is to do with the trust through an estate, and they take the position and charge you and treat you as the trustee in usury under usufruct.
Yep. So when the judge says, please identify yourself, or right at the start of the case, or says, are you Mr. Alex Stefan? My response is, no, Your Honor, I am not Mr. Alex Stefan with the all caps name. I am simply Alex Stefan lower caps, a living man under common law. I would like to confirm there is a distinction between the all caps name that you have there on the paperwork in front of you and the lowercase Alex Stefan, as I am a living man under common law. If you don't say that, he's going to assume, because the two words sound identical when you say them, he's going to assume that you're the all caps name of you, and you, more importantly, you have just put your hand up and said, yeah, that's me. So very important to make that distinction.
And what's something that they often do as well? They always use the word Mr.
Oh yeah, that's going to come up in, actually I don't have it in this letter, it's in another document. So you also want to tell them or ask them not to refer to you as Mr., and you don't refer to yourself as Mr., and there is no paperwork in terms of your birth certificate mainly, there is no, is it on your license? Is Mr. on your license? I don't have my wallet here. Does MR appear on your license?
No.
It doesn't. Okay, so there's no Mr. on any paperwork. So you can very comfortably ask the judge to not refer to you as Mr. Because you are not a Mr. and none of your paperwork says that you're a Mr. And the reason you want to do that is because the word Mr. is the lowest rank of the military. And it also essentially puts you under their jurisdiction, because if you're a part of the military or a part of an organization as an employee or as a little slave, they then have the right to dictate to you. So if you remove that right by saying you're not a Mr., along with the fact that you're a living man under common law, then you've just removed from them that right. Now, in many cases, even the judge himself may not immediately clue up to what you've just done, because they're so used to using the word Mr. all the time. And even after you've asked them not to do it, they'll keep doing it, and you got to keep reminding them. But eventually, once you pound it hard enough and often enough, then they'll start to realize, oh, that's why he's saying it. Yeah, that's right. Because they kind of know in the back of their head, but it's not, because they don't deal with nutcases like us every single day. We come up every now and then. It'll probably take them a while to clue into what you're saying.
Yeah, we're really out of our minds, aren't we? You know, outside of those prison bars that we got indoctrinated into, just way out of our minds, brother.
Correct.
Yeah, well, that's right. I mean, it's a title. I'm not a man of title. You know, and a title pertains, as you said, to the military. When we're occupied, we're in war, economic. We've got a foreign administrator, namely the Australian government, that's operating from an island outside of Australia. They have no jurisdiction here whatsoever. They're nothing more than a private trading company. Now, when you mentioned, you know, the military and the lowest rank, etc., you'll find that in page 516 of the Australian Styles Manual, 6th edition.
Thank you. Thank you for pointing that out. I forgot about that, yes.
You are more than welcome. You won't be able to find, you probably won't be able to find the page somewhere on Google, but you certainly won't be able to get a PDF of that. You'll have to buy it. But and that, I believe, is a sort of a guide to the way that they set out their styles and their documents, etc. So they should, some should be quite aware of what they're doing. And, you know, when you speak that I have no title, I'm a Christian man, I'm a man of peace, I make peace. So how the hell could I be in a military at a post in contrast of, you know, my commands and covenant with my Heavenly Father?
Yeah.
And that, yeah, that's a really good point. But yeah, as we're speaking on the point, you know, you step up to a Mr. John Smith, I think it was, well, you know, you're the person and you're going to get shafted.
Yeah, correct. And that's one thing that the lawyers are either not really aware of, or they kind of just ignore it. Because if you have a lawyer representing you, you know, he'll straight out just put you under the name of the all caps with the word Mr. in front of it, and you've already lost before you've even started. Anyway, did I already do number 3?
No.
No? Okay. So number 3, my common law identification card, which is issued to me by the International Common Law Court, was issued to me by the International Common Law Court, identifies me as a living man under common law and shows my ownership of the legal person name, all caps, Alex Stefan, under common law. So not only do I have a birth certificate from the common law court identifying me as the living man, I also have a registration of ownership of the legal fiction name as well, which is an extra layer of protection for me. Number 4, the all caps legal person / entity is not me personally, but is a separate legal fiction / entity. Ownership of the all caps name, Alex Stefan, is registered to me with the International Common Law Court, and this is the registration number. You do want to provide them with some evidence of what you're saying. It always helps. So I would not recommend you make all these statements without providing some kind of backup for it. And anyone can go onto the Common Law Court and check just entering these numbers, or do a search and find that, yes, you are in fact registered.
Yeah. So you've got there, the all caps legal person entity is not me personally, but is a separate legal fiction entity. Well, that's also legal personalities, because there's also several legal personalities that they use. And yeah, exactly. And that's very important. Never make any claims unless you've got proof of claim.
Yeah.
I recall when I was in a federal court case once, I had, it was probably a 20-page affidavit, but it was 320 pages thick. And the prosecutor had a problem with it. He goes, oh, you know, it's so thick. It's, you know, this much of just the affidavit and the rest is like this big. And that was just proof of claims, everything that I spoke of, everything. And I was pointing out everything, brother. It's actually on the record in the federal court. So when I go back into the registry there, I've got a lot of dirt on these shysting cretins.
Yeah, that's really good. And I need to practice that more. In my upcoming court case, I noticed in my defense that I've written down, I have a number of statements in there that I haven't supported. So I need to go back and fix that before the day comes up. So yeah, thanks for that. Number 5, my ownership of the legal entity and name known as Alex Stefan, all caps, is also...
Stop.
Sorry?
Stop.
Stop.
No ownership, okay? You got to lose that word and belief of ownership.
Okay.
It would be more of you'd be in control of it, because that...
No control.
Yeah, because that social contract, or the presumed ownership way back when, until we came to the knowing that it was all fraud, therefore it's null and void, that would give you control
Yeah, right.
over that.
Okay. Yeah, good point. Yep. Okay, so I'm going to fix that. I'll change that to control going forward. Yeah. Okay, good point. Thanks. Is also registered on the PPSR. Now, the PPSR is in Australia is known as the Personal Property Securities Register. And it is a government-run website / organisation where all ownership of all assets can be registered. And if, for instance, the police wants to confiscate something, or a bank wants to confiscate something or repossess something, and it's not registered on the PPSR, they can take that, and then you'll have to prove the fact that you own this asset and have a right to it in a court. In the meantime, they've taken possession of it. And you'll have a hard time doing that. Whereas if it's registered on the PPSR beforehand, the bank or whoever it is will have a much harder time taking or repossessing whatever the item is off you. And it'll be much easier for you to make your case, possibly without even needing to go to a court. But if you did end up in court and you have a registered PPSR for whatever the item is, it makes it a lot easier on you.
So you have a security, let's just say over your automobile for say $1 million. So if they want that or take that, they need to pay out the $1 million before they can get their mitts on it. Would that be?
Yeah. What I've done is I've actually registered the existing documents. So I've registered the existing birth certificate, the existing passport, driver's license, car, registration, my house, just all my personal effects. That's what I've done. Just all the real things that I currently have. I haven't attached to that any extra documents like what you've just stated. But I suppose I could do that too.
And it's a good rule just to do everything. I mean, you know, you're in relation to your telephone account, to if you're renting your tenancy agreement, everything you can put in on that register. And I mean, I know that the register there because I bought a car a couple of years ago, and I actually went on there to make sure that there was no security over the car, because if there was and I got it, well, they'd take it back off of me because it's someone else's. So it does have significance there, and well done.
Bank accounts?
Bank accounts, exactly. Yeah, bank accounts, everything that has that in your name.
So what is the effect of putting a bank account, registering your bank account on the PPSR? What does that protect you from?
Well, it's been known that, you know, certain trading companies under the disguise of government garnish your bank accounts, etc. More we've got up here in Queensland State Penalty Enforcement Registry, which is SPUR. Now, people that get any infringements, etc., you know, by the police in relation to road infringements, etc., and you don't pay them, it'll automatically go to that registry, and they it's unbelievable. They can suspend licenses. They have their own little task force as well, where they go out and they cannot, but they do, and they take people's personal properties, etc. So, you know, I guess perhaps you know, in the case where they believe they will garnish money out of your account, maybe even child support, you know, you've got some sort of recourse there, and you know, you can really notify them of such registrations there, and you've got that foundation there too, perhaps. Not that I've ever experienced it.
What about when you get a speeding fine and your driver's license and your car and all that are registered on the PPSR? What can that do for you?
Well, the same sort of principle, really. You know, you've got it on the registry. And I have a car, a perfected title there that was taken off of Nevdes, which is a deeper rabbit hole to look into when it comes to, you know, your automobile. because it's already pre-registered before when it was manufactured, etc. But it's just something that you've got there, something a bit more solid that you can use, you know, when you want to enforce certain things, etc. I believe, because I mean, with these things that you mentioned, the PPSR and the filings and the registrations, etc. I mean, these guys here are just so lawless. They just do what they want. And I always bring it back to enforcement, because it's not until you enforce that these guys start pulling up and pulling their heads in. Because unfortunately, you know, in this world, unless it affects someone financially, because everything's to do with the money, you know, you can't control these guys. But when you can enforce, they certainly, how can I help you? And that's the empowerment that I've felt before from a few successes. And this is why I'm here now on YouTube, being public, and this is why I'm here with you. Got the opportunity to meet you, Alex, is because I want others to feel that empowerment. Because if we could all be that empowered and pull off certain things to be in control of these criminals, the better the world would be, the better the future it is for our children, you know.
Agreed. The banks and a lot of the finance leasing companies and so forth, they all use the PPSR, and that's how they secure the assets. So if you get a car loan or if you get a car lease, they normally would register that on the PPSR to make sure that they have a claim to that asset. If you hire a car from Thrifty, that car will usually be on the PPSR as well. So it's a protection mechanism that all these companies use to make sure that their assets can't be essentially stolen from them through various processes.
That's much like, say you take your car to a garage and they do a $3,500 job on it. They can actually put a security over the car while it's in their possession until such time it's paid. When it gets paid, then they take that off.
What if you already have your car on the PPSR and you take it to the mechanic?
Well, that's a different story then, isn't it? EA.
Yeah.
Because what is it? Maximum in law is first in best dress or something like that, isn't it?
Correct. So they can still register it. They can register your car on their PPSR, but what happens then is there's a priority date. So yours was registered first, and you can prove that. You'll have the paperwork to prove that. So their registration, even though they were able to register it, becomes null and void.
Awesome. So the PPSR is used by a lot of institutions. So it's quite clear that it's got great power in the climate that we're facing, with all these criminals trying to, you know, take things and repossess things and, you know, just garnish our bank accounts, etc. So that's really cool.
Yeah. So the PPSR is also used in New Zealand. It's got the same name, but it's a different website, different system. And in the United States, I believe it's referred to as a UCC1 and a UCC3. Is that correct?
Sounds familiar. Yep.
Okay, so let's move on. Number 5. My ownership of the legal entity and name known as Alex Teffaha is also registered on the PPSR. And notice of this was sent to Victoria Police by registered post on this date, and an affidavit affirming my standing as a living man under common law. So I had already sent paperwork to Victoria Police and pretty much most of the other government departments prior to this. Now, when they received it, most likely they probably just chucked it in the bin, who knows? But that's not the point. The point is that I can now use this as evidence that Victoria Police have prior notice. They've already been notified of my standing. If I'm standing in front of a judge, I can just tell the judge that. Very important, always send all of your documentation via registered post, not express post, not regular post, not courier, registered post. I'm amazed at how many times I've had to tell people that, and they say, well, express post also has a number on it. Express post and registered post are not the same thing. But when you're standing in a court, you can provide that registered post number, which can be checked online, and it can be confirmed that yes, you did in fact send this on that day.
So there is the proof of claim, and it's also registered through the postal system.
Correct.
Because the postal system is quite powerful, isn't it?
Well, it can be if you use it correctly, yes. Like I said, if you send it via regular post, probably not so powerful because you have no evidence of the fact that you sent it as such. Number 6, the Victorian driver's license number bearing the legal entity name Alex Teffaha is also registered on the PPSR, and notice has been sent to both Victoria Police and Vic Roads by registered post on this date with the above mentioned affidavit confirming my standing as a living man under common law. So basically all I'm doing here is just providing a lot of evidence, as much evidence as I can to back up what I'm saying. The more evidence you can provide, the better. Prior notice really helps. You know, the fact that I had already told Victoria Police and Vic Roads, and with using an affidavit, not just a regular letter, witnessed by a justice of the peace or a notary public, all of that helps.
Yeah, because we don't want to be sending letters. We're not doing pen pals to Nana Muscuri or anything. We're talking about a legal system.
Correct.
A very nefarious system that's lawless. So, you know, and when we speak of the enforcement, we need to set certain principles, and these are the ones that Alex is speaking about now. You know, registered post for record keeping. You know, there's all proof of claims throughout the process.
Now, I should mention something. Actually, now that you mentioned that, I should say something. This letter, perhaps an even better way to do this is actually to do this as an affidavit rather than just a regular letter. So there are, and I think you even mentioned that last time, actually, I think in our previous video. This could actually be structured as an affidavit rather than a letter, which would give it a bit more weight, and it would have a much better standing in court. So because of the current situation here where we're in lockdown, I can't get on the road to just go see a JP or a notary public. It's a little difficult at the moment. So I'm doing this as a letter. I'm going to do the second one as a letter, but the third one will be an affidavit. And the affidavit will confirm that I already sent these previous 2 letters, and then it'll confirm all this stuff as well.
Okay, I've got something for all you lovely people out there. Now, if you're looking for a JP, I'll put a link in the description as well. But you've got JPs all around, all the suburbs, all the states, etc. Now, it comes under an after-hours search result, but when I put it in there, you click on it, you put in your suburb, and you'll find a big array of lists of JPs. One could be right around the corner. Give them a call, pop around, get the job done. Bob's your uncle. Correct.
My problem is that I've done the search, and the closest one to me is more than an hour away.
Oh, jeez.
And it's in Melbourne. And Melbourne's in lockdown. I don't live in Melbourne. I'm in the regional area, which is a bit better. But it's very difficult for me to go into Melbourne and then come back out.
Also, you know, you can have a few good witnesses to witness your document there. And recent times, I haven't even bothered with any JPs. I just, you know, I normally use the we and the our and as OUR in documents because, you know, my Heavenly Father is my witness.
Yeah.
So, you know,
you can have 2 witnesses instead of a JP or a notary public. And so I'm actually going to do that. I'll do that with this letter. So you can still call it an affidavit and just have 2 normal people witness it, and it still stands up as an affidavit if it's not signed by witnessed by a JP or a notary.
Technically, I wouldn't know, but I would have presumed so.
Yeah, me too.
So if anyone can add on to that, by all means, answer that for us.
So I will be transitioning, going forward, I am actually going to transition all of my letters are going to become affidavits, and they will all be witnessed by either two people or a JP and or a notary. Yeah.
Well, after this recording, I'll have a chat with you, and I might be able to get you a notary public seal on that document, mate.
Oh, that'd be nice. That'd be really good.
And that could be performed in the way, a legit way, considering the current environment, because if the system does such a thing, well, there's no reason why you cannot either. So,
yeah. Okay. So number 7, copies of these, along with my International Common Law Court identity card, are available upon written request as evidence of my standing. So you're giving them plenty of opportunity to, they can request information, blah, blah, blah. You're allowing them to engage. You're more than happy to prove what you're saying is in fact true. Number 8, the statute you quoted in the infringement notice states that it applies to persons, which are legal fictions. Please see a legal dictionary for the definition of a person. And further down, I will be asking him to prove that I am a person when I start asking the questions. Currently, this section is just me making a few statements. Persons and legal fictions are usually identified by the all caps names, but I am not a legal fiction. So then the next section here, I've gone through my standing as a living man under common law. Now I'm going to go through his standing as an employee of the private for-profit company known as Victoria Police, and this is the ABN number here.
if I could just give you a quick suggestion there, with your subheadings there, which is fantastic. That's how I lay out my documentation also. But the one above that, you could perhaps make it a 1, as in, and then in Roman numerals, and then in your second one, you know, Roman numerals 2. So therefore, you have actually something attached to that subheading. So when you've got to refer to it, you can go, you know, section 2, subsection 3.
Yeah, so this would then become 1.1, 1.2, 1.3.
No.
No?
Using Roman numeral. And they're section.
Oh, just at the top here.
Yeah, so you'd have it as a Roman numeral 1 and then so on.
Yeah, like that.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah,
or whatever suits. You've got a few different ideas you can come up with. Yep.
Okay. Yeah, good point. Okay, so in 2015, the High Court ruled, the High Court ruled in HCA 11, 2015, that if you have an ABN and provide services for money, you are a trading company. So Victoria Police have an ABN, and I guess you could call it a service, and they also charge fees in the way of fines and levies and so forth. So you could say that based on the High Court ruling in 2015, Victoria Police can in fact be classified as a trading company. The Fair Work Act, Section 35, states that if you have an ABN and employ people, you are a company, private company. Once again, Victoria Police have an ABN and they do employ people. So they're a private company. So why am I saying this? I'll show you.
Well, perhaps when we're talking private companies or corporations, you know, there needs to be some sort of a contract, a meeting of the minds, an agreement to the terms of their services, etc. Now, I know for a fact if there was something coming to me, you know, saying that if I went on the road and I was 1 kilometre over the limit, I'm going to get fined this and all the rest of this, their terms, I'd certainly decline and say no, thank you. So how is it that they, well, we know the system works in presumption.
Correct.
So I think, you know, this is why I've stated it many times in this current environment. You know, we're dealing with trading companies, so it's not a bad thing if you know, can rid the presumption, create new agreements, create the law. The Maximus law is one that agrees, creates the law, and create your new laws and then enforce these things. Now, I feel that when many people start to do this, and do it successfully, you know, we're going to have a different environment out there. They're going to be very, very cautious.
Yeah. Before we get to that point, though, I imagine there is going to be a lot of pushback from them, because not only do they work on presumption, they also work on coercion, as we've seen. Coercion is one of their number one tools that they use, by threatening you with not only fines, but arrest, imprisonment, taking your children from you, etc. So if you're, I guess my caution to people is, if you're going to go down this road, be willing to and be prepared to have to face the music and have to handle this kind of behavior and this kind of treatment. It's not pretty, as I'm sure many of you have already seen on YouTube videos and all that sort of thing.
And there is a couple of ways you can deal with that. I mean, and you're totally right. And I mean, it's getting more severe and more out of control, and especially down where you are in Victoria, Alex. So, you know, you could even, you know, just roll with what you feel to roll with. And when the situation gets a little bit sticky and the vibration gets a little bit low, you know, just accept it under duress and get the heck out of there. Wrap the whole transaction up and get home, and then deal with it from there. But if you are recording, you can get a bit of evidence there on your recorder, if you can. And if things get hairy, get out of there, go home, accept anything you want, because at the end of the day, you know, it's only money, and you can always have a payment option there, but we're going to get rid of that in another way through another process. And then we're going to use that and hold them to account. So, correct. You know, again, things get hairy, just accept and get home.
Yep. I've noticed that quite a few people want to argue with the police on the side of the road and refuse to give their details, end up getting arrested. It's actually not necessary. You can give them your details under duress, and then just take it to court. There's no need to get arrested and to make a big scene and argue with them on the side of the road. I would strongly recommend against doing that. Always make sure you're recording. So before you even start talking, as soon as you see them, for instance, I got pulled over the other day. As soon as I saw the lights on behind my car, before I had even pulled over, I had already turned my camera.